Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Tetiana Kobza, a product designer and behavioral design expert with nearly 2 decades of experience building software products that people actually want to use. Throughout her career, she has worked with startups, healthcare organizations, wellness companies, and hospital innovation teams to create more human-centered digital experience. She's also the creator of the Competence Framework, a seven-step methodology that combines strategic thinking, setting, and behavioral science to help team design products that truly serve people. Through her weekly #Behavioral Design Thursday series, she shares practical insights on behavioral designs and how technology can better understand human behavior. Tetiana, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So yes, can you take us back to your childhood basically? So what was it like growing up and what were the experiences that shaped who you are today?
I was born in Soviet Union. It was right before it collapsed, and so I grew up in Kyiv, Ukraine, and I grew up in like new country that was just born, and it was passing all the challenges of growth of setup because it was like before that 70 years we had one type of rule, one type of economy, one type of way of life. So like my parents, uh, they grew up on very different values, very different approach to life, very different careers, career views, and that's why it was like very challenging to change the approach, to change to adapt to the new way of life. And I think it like very much shaped my personality too, because you see that the adaptation, the change, and like flexibility is one of the most important skills that you can have because the reality can change, the environment can change, and as we can see now, with the war and like everything what is happening, the ability to adapt to the new realities like it was one of the most important skills.
Wow. All right. So yes, thank you for sharing your story with us, right? And yeah, I'm curious, right? Were you always curious about technology, like technology and how people, think, or those interests, or do those interests later develop over time?
Yeah, my dad, he was a developer himself. That was like
Mm.
these old, uh, huge machines with the special cars. That it was like the to make like some simple calculation. It took like a couple of days, and like the whole room of computers and like all our home was filled with those like programmable cards that he was putting in those machines. Yeah, so that's why, and because of his job, we got a computer pretty early. And when I was a child, I loved playing on the like the video games there, and like we got the internet and like exploring new things. So I was interested in technology from the childhood, and that's why I went to the university following the specialization of computer science and worked as a developer first. Then I changed more to the managerial roles like project product management, and then like founded my own company in 2013.
Wow. Okay. So I like your story, right? It seems rosy and all. It's almost like, oh, your story is cute. But, this is real life, right? So I believe, you faced some challenges along the way, right? During that phase of your life. So were there any challenges you faced growing up, or when you were in your 20s, when you newly went into technology?
There are, of course, that like I think that as life of any person, mine wasn't like covered with roses and and everything. So yeah, there are like challenges every day, and every let's say phase of life has its own challenges. In my childhood, because as I told you, so we didn't have too much money to like to have anything extra for the education, travel, or other things. So that's why, like, I was lucky that I was very curious about new things. So I loved learning. I loved studying, and that's why in the university. I was doing well, and from the challenges, I think that maybe we can say that from the challenging part when I started, IT was not actually the uh, area that a lot of women were in. So that was considered to be more like, the men's space. And but I would and I know that some of the girls, like let's say my age, they had like some challenges with that. So like it was harder for them to build their careers and everything. I didn't face any mm, let's say discrimination, so I didn't feel it. In contrary, I always felt support from my male colleagues, and like they always helped me if I needed help or just advice or something. And also I met a lot of like powerful and very successful women on the way. So yeah, but I think that because of uh, I think that mental thing that is like not from the outside but from inside, this like perfectionism, like thinking that okay, maybe I'm not enough, the imposter syndrome. So all those things, they were like always on the way.
All right. Wow. Okay. So, it was more of internal rather than external, right? And I feel like, as the conversation goes on, we're going to talk more on that, right? So now you've spent 18 years building products, right? So how did your professional journey begin?
So I started to work straight after university. I would even say it was like, in the last year of university. So I started to work, and I worked on the different roles. And I realized at some moment that pure coding is not exactly my thing. So I like communicate with people. I like, more high level picture. I like designing things rather than only building them. So I think that now this role of product engineer, that is like with AI more and more available, this position becomes very popular. There's like people who are doing everything, so they have like some product vision and they can build the products together with AI help. But at that moment, we didn't have anything like that. So that's why I switched more to the product and project management. I worked in several startups, and when one of the startups that I was working with, it didn't um, succeed. So we didn't receive the fundings, and the company got closed. So I decided that okay, maybe, and I was a CEO of this startup, so that was like that. It hit me this, and it was I realized that it's I'm a good engineer. I have a very good like technical part. I can do like a good product, but to build the business, you need, especially like the product business, you need to be also very well aware of marketing, sales, and like the fundraising and all other things. And that's why when I realized that that's a lack in my knowledge, and I started to learn more and educate myself in those areas. And in the meanwhile, so we were like, I created my own company, which is uh, which was because it got acquired some time ago, but it's still doing this. So, Diversida is creating mobile and web applications for our clients, and that was my business for 12 years. And I sold it recently to the wonderful company Tech Magic that is also like has this similar approach and a similar um, vibe, let's say. And yeah, so that's like now I'm involved with Tech Magic as a strategic account manager. But yeah, but thinking more what is coming next and what are new adventures await.
All right, well, so we're actually going to be diving into what you're doing there, right? And like you said, new adventures, right? So first of all, before we go into that, I would like for you to tell the audience, right? Many young people today, they dream about building products, or should I say starting businesses. So what do they often misunderstand about the process of, starting a business?
Uh, I think that most of the startup, and I worked with a lot of them, they not always fully understand that building product is like a very small part of the whole business success,
Mm,
and they very often focus very much into the product itself, features it has, like the design and all other things, and think less about how they going to bring in new users. Yeah, so because like especially now, the more competition is on the market, is like there are so many applications in the App Store, and with AI, when build the application takes you, I don't know, a couple of weeks, yeah, it's going to be more and more. And how to stand out of this crowd. So how you are going to attract your audience, how you're going to keep them with you. So that is like. Um, that's a big thing that's very often missed. Also, what I see is yeah, they do not pay enough attention to behavioral component. So why people are going to use the app? So what is um, their motivation? Because building like just some useful thing is not
mm,
enough, because there are so many competitors, and they need to feel with your app somehow different, and they want to feel more empowered. And that is like that's very much goes to the behavioral science, rather than to more like the usability or UI.
Wow. Okay, so like you've said, it's not just about the product, right? It's not about building the product. It's about the behavioral part of it also, and then getting users, right? So one needs to focus on all aspects, not just one aspect, so that you could build a successful company. Right. Wow. Okay, I'm learning. Right.
That's
Okay,
true.
so yes. So now how did the, competence framework come about, right? And what problem was it trying to solve, basically?
So Competence was born as a result of me summarizing up all my recommendations that I do for my clients, because depending on the client personality, they usually very much focused on one step of the whole uh, product development process, uh, and uh, um, and they are not thinking of the rest. And that brings at the end to some miscommunication between teams. When people are building products that are not having very like clear vision, and they got lost in like the different features in different direction, and to like prioritization. Or, as I already mentioned, they are missing the behavioral component, or they're missing, like, this validation stage of, like, there are different hypotheses, and we need to choose which one is working and which one is not. And that's why I divided, like, the whole process to 7 stages. let's say, and more like, 7 questions you need to ask that cover like all the process, starting from the strategic thinking and finishing like, very practical, the agile loop of development and validation. And yeah, so that's the whole process. I formed it into framework to make it more structured, and it come handy and very useful.
Mm, mm. All right. So do you mind sharing, those questions with us, right? You said more like questions. So what are those 7 important questions one should ask?
Yeah, so that's like always start with why. So why you want to build this product, and that's usually answer to the why question is either what problem we are trying to solve or what we are trying to improve. And the same for your users, and the same question you ask for your users, why they are going to use your application. So what their problem it's solving. And that's one thing. And that's surprising. It sounds very like logical, but very often founders, the answer to this question is like very fuzzy, and there are a lot of like different reasons and other things. But we are very important to think clearly about it. And then the second one is this emotional component. So emotion, how do we want our users to feel with us? So we are solving their problem that we stated on the step one, but we can solve it in like a very different way. And that's like very important for the further design. Uh, Based on the behavior of the motivational part that we are going to trigger, like the motivational drives we are going to trigger, and why they are going to do things that we want them to do. And these like the answers to those questions, they influence a lot, all the go-to-market strategy, the tone of voice, even the colors of the interface, because the same problem can be solved like let's take, I don't know, the fitness tracking application. So it can be like this Garmin like very strict coach that is saying you are lazy, get up, move, move, move. Or it can be more like supportive and you're doing great, and so more like a friend. Or it can be more like the teacher or educator that is giving you more like that believes that the education is way to transformation. And that's like so the answer to this question really much depends on the personality of the founder, so how they want to approach it. Often the founders are building for like they found like they experience some problem themselves, and then they are just want to solve it for other people who are in the same situation. And that's why it's like it's easy to measure how you want to feel when you use like app like this. So this is very, and that's very important block, and it's very often missed, but we need to pay attention to it. And then the third one is the goal, measure in measurable format. So we had like this why and like more strategic and high level goal, and then I need to form it into the like measurable goal, following a kind of like the SMART goal setup format, which is like measurable, realistic, and all those other criteria. Because we need to have some criteria to like to compare and to see if we are there or not. So how we can understand that we are doing the right thing, and like it's needed, or the like um, or we can say that okay, so this app is doing what I want it to do. So in this case, it's usually should be either like amount of users or monthly revenue. That's also a good sign of revenue is always a good sign of health of the business. or it can be like, so you name it, and it can be like multiple parameters like retention rates or like user activity or I don't know, longest streak in the app or whatever. But we need to write it down, and then it's very important that we need to. That's the fourth step is like, and what is the baseline? What do we have now? Because like not always, probably now we don't have anything if we're starting from scratch. Yeah, but very often, but like this framework it can be applied to not only to new products creation, it can be applied to any process improvement, to any new feature addition or anything. So what do we have now? So in the same terms, if we like, if as we have the goal set up, we need to measure our current um, measurements, our current results, and that is another step that's very often missed in the startup products, that they are not measuring enough data, and that is like I'm very strong advocate of measuring as much information as possible. Even if you don't need it right now, you will probably need it in the future. So all the user activity, all the like events, the especially like the some decision making events, or you can uh, log everything you can log. There are some tools that allow to integrate it, like Crashlytics or similar ones. So that's very important. What data do we have now? What are our results at the moment? And then we move to the hypothesis. What is our like main idea? Preferably one hypothesis at a time. So even if you're building the new product, you just try to choose like some one main flow, one main functionality, one main problem that we are trying to solve. And then, of course, you can add the additional like supporting features and other things. But we need to validate the main core idea. And for this thing, we need to focus on it. So figure out the hypothesis and state it. So what is our assumption? And then the next step is like minimum validation. So it's what is the easiest way to implement this hypothesis into the product and to ship it to the real users and see and validate it. So to make sure that like it's working and users are behaving the way that we expect them to. And the last step is cadence, is like more about time and cadence. So how when we want to start, when we are going to check the results and the criteria of what we are doing next. So let's say that if results are in this range, then we assume that it's working and we keep it, or maybe we improve it a little bit. If they are like in the other range, so we are not sure, so we need to keep running and try maybe tweak it a little bit. And if they're like in the lower than expected rate, so in this case let's drop it and think that okay, so this hypothesis was not validated, so let's try something new. So that's a brief explanation. And each step it can use its own like frameworks or approaches that fit better to it. But so this like I would say that Competence is some kind of meta framework that combines it to the one process.
Okay, so yes, I would say I'm learning a lot, right? So this, the first one is the why, right? Then we have emotional component, which is the second one, which is the how. Then we have the goal. Then we move to measuring data, right? Then hypothesis, also minimum validation, and finally, if I'm correct, the criteria.
With the cadence, yeah. So it's time and
Cadence.
rhythm.
Okay. Okay. All right. So yes, thank you for that one actually. And I believe my listeners would learn a whole lot as well from you. All right. So yes, talking about what you're doing today, right? So what does your work look like today?
So as I mentioned, my company got acquired like 3 months ago. So now
Mm-hmm.
I'm more in the process of supporting uh, all the transition, integrating to the new company, making sure that like our clients are satisfied, people are satisfied, and buyer is satisfied. So like so bringing everything together and make sure that everything works smoothly there. So that's like the my main role now and my main responsibilities. But I assume that after all the integration is done, so I will get new responsibilities, account based ones for in the new company.
Mhm. All right. And I mentioned earlier, right, during your intro, you share insights through your hashtag behavioral design Thursday, right? So what inspired you to start writing regularly?
Yeah, I'm trying to be active in LinkedIn and writing some useful or interesting content there, and that's how like every Thursday I'm publishing some like interesting fact or interesting example on gamification or behavioral design. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, you're welcome to subscribe.
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna be checking it out actually. I could access those insights on you on LinkedIn, right?
Yep.
Okay, definitely. We'll check that out. And yes, my listeners will as well. So thank you, Tatiana. And yes, looking ahead, right? The future, basically. What excites you the most about, the future of behavioral science and product design?
Um, that's an interesting question. I think that principles of behavioral science they are staying the same uh, over the centuries. Now with like more and more technology and like the different and especially AI appearance and like evolution so rapid. I think that we will see more studies. We will get probably more tools to investigate, like to study user like people behavior, not only users but any any people. Also more let's say uh, ways to apply the principles in the products, more ways to test, to prototype things, to see how they are accepted, how they are received. And I think that it would be also very interesting to see the evolution of AI, because even now, so I was like passing the anthropic course the other day, and I was very surprised to realize that like AI, it works like very similarly to human mind in a way, so that like those this like disadvantages that flows in AI, like hallucination or like some of the context loss, or the limited uh, working memory, they very much resemble the same as our mind work, like like the false memories, like the this like blurred middle section of the big documents, or so we remember like the first part and the last one, and the middle is gets a bit blurry, and so nobody programmed it on purpose, but there are so much similarities. I think that we will see a lot of interesting things. So
Mm. Wow. All right. So thank you, Tanya, for sharing your beautiful insights with us today. We really do appreciate it. And I would like to ask, right, what kind of impact do you hope your work will leave on the world?
I hope that my work will help to build more products that people love to use, and especially say majority of like product that I was involved to are either in healthcare, health tech, or in education. So those are areas that I believe are very important for the
Wow.
people and for the world, and so that's why I really hope to make some change.
All right. Wow. So yes, thank you, Tanya. And my podcast, right, is for young adults basically who are seeking to, learn, right, and just get advice when it comes to life from people who have lived experiences. So I needed to talk to someone out there, right? Finally, I just want you to talk to people because so many people in their 20s, they feel pressure to have everything figured out, right? Which I don't think is possible. So what would you tell them regarding that?
I would recommend to try
Mm.
and like it's better um, to try and regret than not try and regret. so so that's my philosophy. And also from my experience, from experience of people I know, the fear is like the worst enemy. And
Mm.
this um, fear of losing make you lose because you are not even trying. So that's the most important advice I would give. So just try, don't be afraid. Even if you fail, it's not a big deal.
Mm. Wow. All right. So try regardless, right? Don't be
Yes,
afraid. And even if you fail, you could always try again, right? Who
exactly.
cares? Who cares? So yes, thank you, Tanya. This has been really amazing, I would say. And it brings me to the final segment of my podcast. I call it the rapid fire segment. Could either
Okay,
answer with a word or a phrase starting now, right? So would you prefer coffee or tea?
coffee.
Oh, okay. So morning person or night owl?
Definitely night owl.
Okay, okay. So what is a book that, has changed your perspective?
Yeah, that was Cialdini's Influence. I read it in my like early 20s, and it's like it brought me to the interest to behavioral design and science, and I was like, oh my God, that's so amazing.
Mhm. Wow, all right. So startup or corporate environment?
Startup.
Oh, okay. So what is your favorite app you use every day?
It's clothes.
Okay, so what is one skill everyone should learn?
um, I think it's like communication.
Okay, all right. I was expecting you to say that. I've spoken with a whole lot of guests and they always say communication, right? So I was expecting that. Wow. Okay, all right. So what is one thing people misunderstand about success?
It's not about money. It's about how do you feel, and that's like way more important.
All right. Okay. So what is something you're currently learning?
AI
Ooh,
always learning every day, and every like day it evolves and it lets you do more amazing stuff. So that is something that I like learning all the time.
wow. Okay. AI. And finally, right, what is one word that describes this season of your life?
Mm, it's adventure.
Okay. Adventure. All right. So yes, thank you, Tatiana. This has been really amazing, I would say. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, right? Your story reminds us that meaningful work isn't about building technology, right? It's about understanding people and
That's
creating
true.
solutions that, genuinely improves life. Right. So thank you, Tayana. And yes, finally, before you go, where can listeners get to, learn more about you and also connect with you?
It's my LinkedIn, Tetiana Kobzar, and my website, tetianakobzar.com.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to put the link in the show notes so it's easily accessible for listeners. And to my listeners, I would say thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, just as it did in me, make sure to share to someone who you think might need this. And also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Once again, thank you, Tanya. Do have a
Thank
beautiful
you.
day ahead of you. All
Thank
right.
you. Have a
Take
good
care.
day. Bye.
Bye.